The reality is many people do it by outsourcing. I don't know a single team who doesn't outsource in some form. If you create an environment where the other studios helping or being partners also have a voice what the final product is, then it's good. If it's like just someone telling you I need 100 faces by tomorrow, that's not going to really do anything good.
That's Christoph Hartmann, president of 2K Games and one of the main people pulling the strings behind BioShock, Borderlands, and Mafia. In late 2007, he started a new team, 2K Marin, to lead development on BioShock 2, but as he explains, the game was actually built by studios all over the world. Some internal, such as 2K China and 2K Australia, and others brought on board just for BioShock, like Digital Streams and Arcane. Outsourcing is a big deal in game development these days, so Hartmann invited us in to discuss the benefits and challenges of making games this way.
I think when you start up a team or studio, it's always great when you have some foundation where they don't have to reinvent everything and reinvent the wheel, so they don't have to do their own technology, they don't have to build all the content or the ideas from scratch. It's a great way to set it up. It's still hard work, you still got to make the game, you still got to be creative about it. Let's put it this way, just because another studio potentially does Call of Duty doesn't make it that much easier to do it. We looked always for studios we feel offer something unique. So DE has great technology, Arcane is very creative. Our Australian folks, obviously, it's the studio which is our studio, plus they helped a lot on BioShock 1, and it's a very natural progression here. We also had Shanghai involved. There's two things to it. The one for me was first like a cost reason. As I looked what has to change in this industry, we all know the costs are rising, like crazy, and how it can do it. So I have one option, I go to Florida, make a studio there, or go somewhere else, which the problem is, you don't attract a lot of talent. Or the other is I looked at different industries, and when I looked at what Boeing is doing, the new Dreamliner build, they're basically saying it's too expensive to make planes completely solely up in Seattle. So many parts are outsourced and then they assemble it together. And I figured that's the future of this industry.
To get a closer look at their process, we visited 2K Marin's studio and sat down with team members from Digital Extremes and 2K Australia in the same way they did through development on BioShock 2. Their studio houses two oddly named teleconference rooms, Greenland and Blueland, but since Greenland was filled with secret unannounced things on the day of our visit, we spent time checking out the team's Polycom and life-size teleconference setups in the room known as Blueland.
This is affectionately known as Blueland because it's very, very blue. This was our very first conference room when 2K Marin started, and so this is why it's got the biggest TV and so forth. And so we started with Polycom and moved on to life size, and this allowed us to do video conferencing, and this has been the main way that we communicate a lot of times if we aren't able to actually go up and work with them directly on site.
This room was pretty important to us towards the latter part of BioShock 2 because Jeff and myself and Jordan, our creative director, and a bunch of our artists and designers and stuff spent like hours and hours and hours and hours in here playing through the game level by level and just like making exhaustive commentary on everything. So yeah, we spent a lot of time in this room.
On BioShock 1, we had just started using the Polycoms, and we mostly used them for just like actual talking conferences. And so with BioShock 2 was the first time we had actually got it working, so we were able to play the levels together like that. We would need to try and get our Polycoms in for multiplayer and in the morning, because by the time we came into the office, it was already afternoon for them. And then as soon as it got too late to actually have Polycoms with these guys, it became about the time where we could Polycom with Australia. So
you guys are here all day, basically.
Yeah.
I actually kind of like this idea of the 24-hour development cycle, that like somewhere BioShock is being made, around the world.
How much do you think you saved doing it this way versus having everyone here in Marin doing the same game?
I don't think we saved really anything. Honestly, yeah. I think we improved the quality, because the reality is if you build up a new studio and think you're going to hire all the good people, you're much better off, finding really experienced talent rather than saying, oh, it takes me 10 years how to figure out multiplayer. You can find someone who has experience in that. Yes, you could hire the people, but there's always one missing. You build an org chart and saying, oh, you have it figured out and need those 10 guys, and you find 6 of them and the other 4 you don't find until the end of the project. So that you can do your learning curve much quicker. The downside obviously is communications.
I remember the first time we were meeting the whole programmer team from the single player side, and we're having a pretty in-depth technical conversation with them, and all of a sudden this giant dog walked across the screen. Like, do you know there's a dog there?
I mean, I know I called in to accidentally to China one day, and there was a bunch of people in the room just looking at me like, why did you just call us having a private conversation?
A lot of times you'll call them up and there'll be an empty room, and then you'll be like, damn, they're not here. And then you'll see somebody like walking by with coffee, hey! And you like yell out to them, and then they like come back in because they can hear the speaker yelling in there. Like, hey, can you get Andrew for us?
So we didn't go and pick some company in China we have never heard of and never met just because they gave us the most competitive pricing on building a few character models. Everyone knows everyone in this industry, and you look around and you feel who you're most comfortable with and have ideas, and then gotta at some point say, let's do something together. Obviously you have to work out the financials, but it's really about, do you feel comfortable, Tom? And do you feel like together you can achieve something which is much greater than like each one of you could do?
Do you worry that in some of these cases, like I know with Digital Extremes and Arcane, they have other like full games that they're working on in addition to what they're doing for you guys? Do you worry that you might get like their B squad?
There's the worry, okay, if I'm not the only project they have, will they fully focus on me? But on the other side, it is that if you did the only source of financing, it's also a risk, because maybe at some point, they're totally dependent on you and you have no leverage.
With 2K China, what's the main goal of that studio? Is it strictly to basically support other studios?
Or it's both, like they do on one side traditional outsourcing work, while they sometimes already manage outsourcing, outsource to it's not an outsourcing house. They manage outsourcing to other companies who, by the way, which I learned, Chinese companies now outsourcing to Bangladesh to get the prices down. So I don't know where it stops. They're doing already entire SKUs for us, so some V SKUs, at the beginning some PS2 SKUs, ODS handheld SKUs. They did this, a lot of the Civ iPhone game was done from there, and that's going to be the future. There is obviously a component that is cheaper there, but the advantage is you can try it also more. Don't forget, the prices you pay in the Bay Area. On one side you get all the superstars who are really good, but you still can only afford it to do in a perfect plan to make all the decisions at the beginning. You can be experimental like you had for PlayStation 1 period or PlayStation 2 and original Xbox. You could try things. A team could fiddle around and 3 times prototype and then go in full to production. That's what you can do in China now. You can afford it. You can't do it here anymore. Yes, there's always cost reasons to do it, but for me, really, I don't think it's all about the cost, because don't forget, they don't have the experience. It takes them also much longer to do it. What's lacking in a culture like the Chinese is the creativity. Don't forget, people are trained to fit within the system, so it's very hard to get an individual who's kind of saying, I have a dream, I want to do this or that. So it will take a while until it gets there, but over time it will happen. But yes, ultimately I want this to be like a studio on its own, do their thing, and learn a lot probably from the online world, because that's what it's all about in China. But yeah, I still believe in a studio world with smaller studios rather than building a big monster 2,000 person factory. I think groups where everyone knows each other's names will always bound more together. It will be almost more creative. It will be always more intense. And I'm not a big believer in building monster studios where it's very impersonal.